I am Sarah, 31 years old, and the morning I finally held the keys to my own home was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I had imagined it 100 times the weight of that key in my palm, the click of the lock turning for the first time, stepping through the door knowing that every inch of that space belonged to me and no one else. Instead, I stood on my own front porch, staring at a keypad that no longer recognized my code, listening to the sound of my brother laughing somewhere inside. My stomach dropped straight to the floor. Let me back up. I am a registered nurse. I have worked 12-hour overnight shifts, double shifts, holiday shifts, and every kind of shift that exists between them for the past 7 years. I do not say that for sympathy. I say it because every single dollar that went into the down payment on that house came from those hours. $22,000. I transferred it from my savings account on a Tuesday morning before a night shift, and I cried a little in my car in the hospital parking lot before going in because I could not believe I had actually done it. A 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio. Mine. Legally, officially, entirely mine. My family knew I was buying it. My mother had opinions about the neighborhood. My father said I was overpaying. My brother Marcus, who is 34 and has never held a job for longer than 8 months at a stretch, said nothing at all, which I should have recognized as a warning sign, because Marcus always has something to say when things do not benefit him directly. The closing was on a Friday. I signed approximately 400 pages of documents, shook hands with the seller's agent, and walked out into a gray October afternoon with a key fob and a garage code written on a sticky note. The plan was simple. I would spend the weekend moving in boxes with my 2 closest friends, Danielle and Priya, who had both promised to help. We had already rented a moving truck. Danielle had made a playlist. Priya was bringing her label maker, which she treats as a sacred object. I was genuinely, completely happy. I called my mother that evening just to share the moment. She sounded warm and excited, which is not always a given. She said she was proud of me. She asked if she could see photos. I told her I would take some once I had furniture inside so it would not look so empty. She laughed and said that sounded like me, always wanting everything to look finished before showing it off. She was not wrong. We talked for about 20 minutes and I went to bed early because I wanted to be up and at the house by 8 the next morning. What I did not know, and would not find out until I was standing on that porch the next day, was that my mother had called Marcus approximately 10 minutes after hanging up with me. Danielle picked me up at 7:30. Priya met us at the moving truck rental. By 8:15 we were pulling up to the house, and the 3 of us sat in the front seat for a moment just looking at it. Danielle said, "That's your house, Sarah." Just like that, very quietly, like she understood the weight of it. I nodded because I did not trust my voice. I jumped out, walked up the front path, and punched my code into the keypad. The keypad beeped once. Then a red light. I frowned and tried again, more carefully this time, making sure I was pressing the right numbers. Red light again. I looked at the sticky note. Same code. I tried a 3rd time. Nothing. I told Danielle and Priya something was wrong with the lock, and Danielle suggested maybe the battery had died and it defaulted. I pulled out my phone to look up the manufacturer's reset process. And then, while I was standing there squinting at my phone screen, I heard footsteps inside. Not one person. At least 2. And then a voice I recognized immediately, my brother's girlfriend, Chelsea, saying something about the kitchen being smaller than she expected. I knocked. There was a pause. Then footsteps coming toward the door. Then Marcus opened it. He was in sweatpants and a t-shirt that had a small stain near the collar. He looked completely unsurprised to see me, which was somehow worse than any other expression he could have had. He said, "Hey," like I had shown up to borrow sugar. I stood there for a moment, genuinely unable to form a sentence. Behind him, I could see Chelsea in my kitchen, holding a coffee mug that I did not recognize, which meant she had brought her own things. There was a duffel bag near the stairs. A box next to the living room wall. I said, "Marcus, what are you doing in my house?" It was not really a question. My voice came out very flat and very quiet, which is what happens when I am not angry yet, but am about to become extremely angry. He leaned against the doorframe and said, "Dad gave me the code. He told me you wouldn't mind us crashing here for a bit while Chelsea and I figure out our situation." I heard Danielle make a sound behind me that I will not repeat here. I said, "Dad gave you the code." Marcus said. Yeah, he said it was fine. We've only been here since last night. We're not in the way or anything. There's still plenty of room. I want to pause here and explain my family dynamic, because without context, this might seem impossible. My father is not a cruel man. He is a man who has spent 63 years solving problems by smoothing things over, and who has never once in my memory considered that smoothing things over for one person often means creating a serious problem for someone else. Marcus has always been the one who needed smoothing. Failed business idea at 26, Dad lent him the money, never mentioned it again. Evicted from an apartment at 29, Marcus stayed in my parents' guest room for 7 months. Lost another job at 32, Dad made some calls. I am not saying my father does not love me. I am saying that in his mind, I have always been the one who figures things out, so he figures that I will figure this out too. Chelsea appeared behind Marcus and gave me a small, tight smile. She said, "We really appreciate you letting us get settled before you move in." It's so generous. I looked at her for a long moment. I said, "I am not letting you do anything. You are in my house without my permission, and I am asking you to leave." Chelsea's smile did not move. She said, "Marcus said your dad cleared it." I said, "My father does not own this house. I own this house. I have owned it for approximately 18 hours. And I am telling you both, right now, that you need to leave." Marcus pushed himself off the doorframe and his expression shifted. I know that shift. It is the one where he stops being relaxed and starts being wounded, which is his preferred method of avoiding accountability. He said, "Sarah, come on, we're family. Chelsea and I are in a tough spot right now," Dad thought. I said, "I don't care what Dad thought. This is my property. My name is on the deed. My name is the only name on the deed." He said, "It's not like we're strangers. We're not going to trash the place." I said, "That is not the point." Danielle had her hand on my shoulder at this point. She knows me well enough to know that I was keeping it together by a very thin thread and that the thread was fraying. I told Marcus and Chelsea I needed them out within the hour. Marcus started to say something else, and I held up my hand and told him I was not negotiating. I stepped back from the door, walked to the end of the porch, and called my father. He picked up on the second ring and sounded entirely normal. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said. "Dad, why does Marcus have the code to my house?" There was a pause. Then he said, "Well, I thought it would be nice for him to get a head start. You have 3 bedrooms, and you're just one person. He and Chelsea just need a little time to—" I said, "Dad, stop. Did you ask me before giving him that code?" He said, "I didn't think I needed to. It's family." I said, "It is my house. You did not ask me. You gave someone else access to my property without my knowledge or consent. That is not okay." He said, "Sarah, you're making this into something bigger than it is." I said, "A couple has moved their belongings into a home I legally own. I did not give them permission. That is not me making something bigger than it is. That is called trespassing." There was a long silence. Then my father said, "I'm sure we can all sit down and talk about this reasonably." I said, "There is nothing to talk about. Marcus and Chelsea need to leave today. I am asking you to please call Marcus and make that clear, because I would prefer not to involve the police, but I will if I have to." My father said, "Sarah." I said, "I have a moving truck outside, Dad. I have 2 friends who gave up their Saturday to help me. I am asking you to fix what you created." I hung up. I turned back to Danielle and Priya. Priya was very still in the way she gets when she is furious but being controlled about it. Danielle was looking at the house with an expression I did not know how to read. I told them I was sorry they had to see this. Danielle said, "Do not apologize to us." Priya said, "Do you want me to call the non-emergency line?" I thought about it. Then I said, "Give me 15 minutes." I went back to the front door. Marcus had left it open slightly, which I thought might be intentional, making the point that he still felt comfortable in there. I pushed it open and walked in. This was, I want to be clear, my house. My name on the deed. I was not entering anyone else's space. Chelsea was sitting on the floor of the living room next to the box I had seen earlier. She looked up when I walked in and said nothing. I looked around. They had brought 2 duffel bags, the box, a small lamp, and a portable speaker. They had been there since the night before, which meant my father had given Marcus the code sometime on Friday, probably hours after I had called my mother. Marcus came downstairs. He had changed into jeans, which I took to mean he understood on some level that this was actually happening. I said, "I want you both gone in the next hour. I am going to stand here and wait. If you are not out in 1 hour, I am calling the police and reporting a trespassing situation. I will not enjoy doing that, but I will do it." Marcus said, "You would really call the cops on your own brother?" I said, "You are in my house without permission, Marcus." "Yes." He stared at me for a moment. I could see him running through his options, the wounded look, the guilt angle, the appeal to family loyalty. I had seen him use every one of them, usually on my parents, usually successfully. He was trying to figure out which one would work on me. None of them would work on me. He had known that for years, which is why he never usually aimed them in my direction. Chelsea put her hand on his arm and said quietly, "Let's just go." He exhaled. He picked up one of the duffel bags. He did not look at me again. It took them 52 minutes. I know because I stood in the living room and watched the time on my phone. Danielle waited with me. Priya, God bless her, went and got the 3 of us coffee from a gas station 2 blocks away, and came back and handed us each a cup without saying a word. When Marcus and Chelsea finally walked out the front door with the last of their things, Marcus stopped on the porch. He said, "You know Mom and Dad are going to hear about this." I said, "They already know. I called Dad an hour ago." He said, "This isn't over." I said, "Actually it is. I'm changing the code today, and I'm having a locksmith come Monday to change the physical lock as well. I want you to know that so there are no misunderstandings later." He left without responding. I stood in my empty living room for a moment after the sound of his car faded. Danielle appeared in the doorway and said, "Okay?" I said, "I need 30 seconds. She nodded and disappeared. I stood there in the quiet of my house, my actual house, that I had earned and purchased and signed 400 documents to own, and I let myself feel all of it at once. The anger, the exhaustion, the grief, which is a strange thing to feel in a happy moment, but which I felt anyway, because it is always a little grieving when you realize a parent has chosen someone else's comfort over your most basic right. Then I shook it off, because Danielle had a playlist and Priya had her label maker, and there was a moving truck outside. I changed the garage code before I went back out. I did it standing right there in the living room. I chose a new sequence and did not write it down anywhere. The rest of the day we moved boxes. We ordered pizza. Priya labeled every single box with color-coded stickers by room, which was excessive and also exactly what I needed. By 7 in the evening, my bed was assembled and pushed against the wall of the room I had chosen for myself, the one with the window that faced the backyard, and the 3 of us sat on the floor eating the last of the pizza, and Danielle said, "Welcome home." I cried a little, just briefly. My mother called that night. I let it go to voicemail. I was not ready for that conversation, and I knew from long experience that having it before I was ready would only go badly for everyone. The voicemail was 4 minutes long. I did not listen to it until 2 days later. In it, my mother said several things. She said she had not known Marcus was going to actually move things in. She had thought he was only going to look at the space. She said she felt terrible. She said my father had not meant any harm. She said Marcus was going through a difficult time and she hoped I could find it in my heart to understand. She said she loved me. She said she was sorry. I sat with all of that for a while. Then I called her back. I told her I was glad she was sorry. I told her the conversation I needed to have was not really about Marcus. Marcus had done exactly what Marcus always does, and I had handled it. The conversation I needed to have was about the fact that my father had given out my personal security code without asking me. About the fact that when I called him, he had told me I was making something bigger than it was. About the fact that for as long as I could remember, my comfort and my property and my time had been treated as endlessly available resources for the rest of my family to draw on, and that I was telling her now, clearly and without anger, that this was the end of that. My mother was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I hear you. Not I agree. Not you're right. I hear you. Which is actually a meaningful distinction, and it was more than I had expected, so I took it. I told her I would be changing my locks, which I was already planning to do, and that going forward I would not be sharing any security information with anyone in the family. I told her that was not punishment. It was just a fact about how I was going to protect my property. She said she understood. My father called 2 days after that. It was shorter. He said he had not thought it through. He said he was sorry for overstepping. He said he hoped I would give Marcus some grace. I said I would think about it, which was the most honest answer I had. The locksmith came Monday morning as scheduled. New deadbolt, new keypad, new code that exists only in my head. The locksmith asked if I was moving in and I said yes, just got the keys. He said congratulations. I said thank you and meant it. Marcus texted me once, about a week later. The text said, "Must be nice to be able to afford your own place and still treat family like garbage." I read it. I did not respond. I am not sure there is a version of a response that would have helped anything. Marcus is someone who, when he does not get what he wants, reframes the situation until he is the victim of it. I have watched him do this my entire life. I used to exhaust myself trying to correct the reframe. I do not do that anymore. Chelsea, to my mild surprise, sent me a separate text about 3 weeks later. It said, "I want to apologize for my part in what happened. We should not have gone there without your permission. I pushed Marcus to accept his dad's offer because we were desperate and I wasn't thinking about how that would affect you. I'm sorry. I hope you can forgive us eventually. I thought about that one for a while too." I wrote back, "Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. That was all, but I meant it. It is not nothing. Someone choosing to step outside the family narrative to acknowledge a wrong." I filed it away. It has been 4 months now. My house looks like a house. I found a rug for the living room that I love in a way that is probably disproportionate to how much a person should love a rug. I have a small table in the kitchen where I eat breakfast before early shifts. I have a backyard with a bird bath that came with the house and that I have decided to keep, even though I know nothing about birds. My neighbor across the street, an older woman named Patricia, brought me a plant when I moved in. We wave to each other in the mornings. My relationship with my parents is careful right now. Not broken, careful. My mother comes over occasionally. My father came once and was very quiet and looked a little ashamed of himself, which I appreciated more than any speech would have been. We are finding our way back to something, slowly. Marcus and I have not spoken since the text. I think that is probably the right distance for now. What I know is this: that house is mine. I walk in every day and I feel it not as a boast, not as a trophy, but as a simple, solid fact. I earned it. I protected it when I had to. And every morning when I punch in my code and the door opens and I step inside, I think about that moment on the porch with the red light blinking, and I think about how close I came to just going along with it, to telling myself it was temporary, to smoothing it over the way my family has always smoothed things over. I am glad I did not. Some things you have to be willing to be uncomfortable for. Your own home is one of them. Your own name on your own deed is one of them. The right to say this is mine and mean it, completely and without apology, is absolutely one of them. If you are out there listening to this and you have been told, directly or indirectly, that your needs are the flexible ones, that your space is the one that can be rearranged to fit someone else's emergency, I want you to know that you are allowed to say no. Clearly, calmly, without negotiating, without apologizing, you are allowed to change the code.